Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello, my comic book friends, and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I am Gary, your host, and this is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk a little bit about the characters and creators, and examine the stories and the art. This time I want to go back to the 80s and take a look at something out of the ordinary, a little bit. We'll look at New York City Outlaws from 1984 by, I've forgotten the name of it. Oh yeah, Outlaw Comics. And this was a small publisher based in New York, and it looks as though it may have been the main audience may have been intended in New York. I don't know how well distributed these books were, but it does have ads specifically for New York City. Now, New York City Outlaws was a group. They were quasi superheroes. When I say that, because it's a group of people who have banded together to they have code names, but no masks, and sort of have costumes, uniforms of a sort, with trunks and tights, but no superpowers, no masks, and they fight against some kind of organized evil in the city. It's not all organized, but their main opponents seem to be organized. These are part of the black and white explosion of comics in the 80s. They were just swept across the country. They were mostly one or two, sometimes more, issues produced by an individual or a small group of individuals, self-published and distributed, or sometimes picked up by the distributors, major distributors. Stuff, and like that book I talked about the other day, with Grass Green, Wild Man, and that little publisher there, that was Miller Publishing, and these are often referred to as, like a cartoonist kayfabe channel that calls them Outlaw Comics, and in this case, and I think they took that name from this publisher, Outlaw Comics, and the guys at Power Comics call them Power Comics, and I've heard other people pick up that expression as well. And I kind of like Power Comics or Outlaw Comics, either one. Both sound more like a publisher, but they are kind of Outlaw Comics. And this publisher did Outlaw Comics, and they did or Outlaws of New York City Outlaws, and they did Apocalypse 5000. They did a few other stuff. I don't know if you've heard of stuff like the John Tar books, and even the Shallow Man, and some others like that, which I've covered here before, fit into this category, because they're extremely small press, but there's someone who had the money, and they're mostly made out of a love for the medium. the love for comics, and most of them are derived. Sometimes they seem drug induced, but most of them are kind of derived or derivative of some of the other mainstream characters, and it's mostly superheroes. And this is a little different because, well, they're kind of like superheroes, but they're not superheroes. But they're all skilled martial artists, and it actually kind of reminds me more of, in a way, of Marvel's own Sons of the Tiger from the 70s, which is a trio of characters, martial artists who banded together and wore uniforms / costumes and fought primarily martial arts style threat, which gave rise to the White Tiger, because they had these enchanted necklaces that gave them enhanced powers when they were put together. And for one individual, he was much more powerful, and went from Sons of the Tiger to White Tiger, who was a man, and then eventually the White Tiger, who is a woman now. Anyway, these are some fun reading type stuff, and these were, for example, I've forgotten now who the creator was. Okay, it was created by Steve Capellonis, whom I could find nothing about, and it was written by Bob Huzar, who I also could find nothing about. But the artist, you can find quite a bit about, because Ken Landgraf is the artist. He did a lot of this kind of work, a lot of advertising type work, illustrations and the like, and he did some various alternative comic stuff. And now, there's Ken Landgraf, born in 1950. He's an American comic book artist and illustrator, and is artistically influenced by Reed Crandall, Jim Steranko, Wally Wood, among others. And a lot of these you can see in here. As a kid, he bought a diddle machine. Remember those old-fashioned diddle machines you used to have in school, depending on how old you are, as before Xerox machines. And he printed his own comics and sold them through the fanzine Rockets Blast. And I have seen that fanzine. And he served in the U.S. Navy during the Vietnam era, and after which he attended the School of Visual Arts in New York City on the GI Bill. Meanwhile, he contributed illustrations to some pulpy type magazines, and he studied with Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman, and he assisted Howard Nostrand, Gil Kane, and Rich Buckler. And he worked on, he was part of a group doing inks known as the Krusty Bunkers. He worked on mystery titles, etc. at DC Comics. I think that was primarily as an inker, as well as on some inking for Marvel. And he self-published some books, Rock Comics and Starfighters. I've never seen those. And he did comics for heavy metal bands and on Revolutionary Comics. Now, have seen and have had some of the Revolutionary Comics, and so I probably had some of his work there, but I don't know for sure. And various other small press books. And he's done some storyboard work, and he taught at the Parsons School of Design. So even though there are a lot of his work appears less than professional, he is and has been a working professional. And another thing about it, and I'm not going to delve into the stories here. I'm going to take a look through here and look mostly at Ken's artwork. And of course, and these stories are just the first issue one. There, from what I understand, there were 5 issues in the New York City Outlaws, and I have these 2, and I think I have issue number 3 squirreled away someplace. Now, while I was looking into research for this, I discovered that later this year there's to be published a reprint volume, reprinting all 5 issues of the New York City Outlaws, and it can be pre-ordered on Amazon. It's for like $29 or something. So, if you never got or never come across these books, you have the opportunity to take a look at it, and it's good, clean fun, some fun reading. Even though the stories kind of lack a little bit. These were big books. You can see here it says 60 action-packed pages, and I think that's including the covers. But yeah, there's 60 pages, and most of, but not all of the artwork is by Ken Landgraf, as well as the ads. So he was a hard-working fellow back in the 80s. So let's take a little look inside these pages. And now you can get a better look at the covers of these 2 books. And even here on these covers, you can see a lot of the influences. And he did line drawings and then painted versions, hand painted on, and some of them were a bit off here, like that face there, and hand, and his female figure is off a bit, but she's very, very voluptuous and a very attractive lady. Now we'll take a look a little bit here in issue 1. It starts off here, just a page right off the bat here, an advertisement. He did a lot of heavy metal rock and roll advertising, as I hear, for a guitar man plays a guitar man guitar. This is an ad for a store in New York City. Then here is just a brief introduction for our main characters, and then double page spread. And it also came with a fold out poster, which was not stapled into the book, of that spread without the text other than the headline. There we see them. They are in their quasi costumes. So it starts out with a story. You can see a lot of, primarily with the inking and the shading, you see Wally Wood influence. I really saw in the other issue I've got, issue number 3. It's when I really saw a lot of Wally Wood influence when I first looked through it. But you can see a lot here, bits and pieces. Good visual storytelling, some interesting page layouts, and sometimes there are points where it's difficult to tell what's actually going on. You use a lot of Zipatone for grays. And you can see some of the action here. I'm just not going to go through the whole thing, through the course characters. I see his own art style as developed seems to really look a lot like Jim Starlin. But then there are points where you don't see as much in this first issue, but in that issue 4, you see a lot more. You see some outright swipes. Here, that's that figure there looks to me like a swipe, but I'm not sure if it's Jim Starlin. I think or could be Paul Galassi. He does a lot of that. So you even hear an ad for I'm not sure what, really. And the ads here in the back. That's one that he didn't do. But here he did trash and vaudeville. Rock and roll to wear. Clothing. He didn't do those. Some more. Another ad that he did for this popcorn place. One for New York City Outlaws, Flip, and a lot of rock and roll. It has follow-ups, backup stories, because the whole thing isn't all the Outlaws. This is art and story by Ken Landgraf, and this is just the king of punk, and it makes no sense. And before that is the backup story of Armageddon. Was it Armageddon 5000? I think is what it's called. And they have also an individual story title. That's what I'm trying to say. Title for Armageddon 5000. And here, rock band, ad for a rock band, and it has backup stories of actual rock and roll band, but it's as a story done by Ken Landgraf. And here you see them again. Of course, if you were a New Yorker, you would recognize a lot of these locations. Here you have some very strong Jim Starlin, Jim Steranko. You can see, like in this figure here, you really see that is a Jim Steranko leg. He's white, as are these here. These are figures up here are the ninja types are Paul Galassi swipes, and this is Paul Galassi swipe. Here's some Jim Starlin swipey stuff. Paul Galassi. That's Paul Galassi. And then as we go along here, some more just regular stuff. I know that figure from somewhere. I think that's Paul Galassi. I'm not sure. Yeah. Wally Wood there. More Paul Galassi. It's some fun work, but you can as you can say, you can spot the swipes. Here we're coming up to a lot of. See, the female figure is entirely his own, with some strong Jim Steranko influence in the legs. Here you get some combination of Gil Kane swipes on body parts and Paul Galassi swipe on the figure. And there's a Gil Kane swipe. So that figure there is a Gil Kane swipe. So that looks Starlin. And see this, and this really makes me think of the Sons of the Tiger. There's some Gil Kane influence, some Steranko influence, and all through these. Now he would maybe because he was more pressed for time. The swipes are more visible here by issue 4. And some of the others, you can see there's a Gil Kane swipe on that face. You can just see them outright. Paul Galassi. And it's real nice there. And I don't begrudge him. It's just that you shouldn't try to make your swipes or let your swipes be so quite so obvious. And here you have Apocalypse 5000. And the same here, because artists have swiped. Now this is one that's he just did the inks. Story and art by John Jacobs. This was the challenge of Aklu, Astroman. And even this artist, I think he did a lot of swipes. Here is a lot of panels on a page, because he's trying to cram a lot of story in there, and then ads, various ads. And this is Thor, I think. I don't remember his own stuff. And then on the back is an ad for Metal Masters. It's a poster. It's a collage of images, all done by Ken Landgraf, all heavy metal stuff. And that's why I didn't want to try to cover the story. Just talk mostly about the artwork here. And some of the storytelling was okay, some of it wasn't. The writing is subpar, but I have seen a lot worse, both from these kind of books and in professional books. But it's fun reading, and I encourage you to get them if you kind of like some of this stuff. If you come across them, or if you want to order that upcoming reprint volume. It's a lot of fun, and it's kind of fun just to spot the swipes. And I'm not saying anything bad about Ken Landgraf. He is a working professional, or has been a working professional throughout his career, and that's good for him. And I'm not saying that's bad at all necessarily. I just seem to think that you should try to hide your swipes a little more. But okay, and that's all we have for New York City Outlaws and Ken Landgraf. Thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe. If you have some friends who are interested in these kind of comic books, less regular, less mainstream, share it with them, or people who are into heavy metal, because it has a strong heavy metal / punk vibe all throughout the books, not just the ads. And and a lot of martial arts comics influence in there. So, and leave a comment. Do you like these kind of books? I do, just because they're so unusual. It's the medium for storytelling that I am really big on, and I enjoy reading this kind of stuff. So once again, thank you for joining me. Please leave your comments on these books. So remember, comics, even if they have swipes, are art.